Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing an important Arab file. Today we'll be speaking about this important summit or security dialogue that is taking place in the capital of Bahrain, Manama, the 7th session of the Regional Security Forum. It's a dialogue. It is speaking about the regional and international security files, the multilateralism ways of dealing with different challenges regionally and internationally throughout the past period. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry was attending the session and gave a message or gave his speech to the summit and delivered a message to Emir of Bahrain from or on behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, or from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the Bahraini Emir. And this summit really signifies a great importance to the way or the Arab common way of dealing with challenges that are facing this region. Before we start with our episode and before dealing with other aspects, let me first take over the phone Ambassador Hussein Harridy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, madam.
This is the 17th round of the security or regional security dialogue, where the Foreign Minister attended summit facing the region or multilateralism means of dealing with those challenges. You reading to his statements before the session or before the summit, and what messages did it send?
Well, the forum, they call forum that concern the Middle East or the Gulf region. This year's edition of the dialogue takes place amidst some I would call them positive developments as far as Arab questions or Arab according to the resolutions, and elections, presidential and parliamentary elections, are on schedule December 24th. Candidates for the presidential elections have already submitted their papers, and so there are at least 10 candidates. And as far as is concerned, there are some positive developments. Contact between the Syrian government and some Arab countries are going ahead. A couple of days ago, the Syrian president, Mr. Bashar al-Assad, had a meeting with the foreign minister of the United Arab Emirates. And as far as the situation in Lebanon is concerned, I guess there are attempts on the part of the international community to encourage the Lebanese government to go forward with its program of economic reform and to start dealing with the basic challenges facing Lebanon, particularly in the last 2 years. When it comes to Iran, which will be one of the topics that will be discussed in this year's edition of the Manama Dialogue, I guess we are nearing the point where negotiations between the signatories of the nuclear accord of 2015 with Iran would resume, aiming at the United States rejoining the accord, and the Iranian government once again scaling down its uranium enrichment programs. So I guess this year edition is based when some questions, some serious questions facing the Arab countries are moving ahead. Let's hope that the discussions and the recommendations that would come out of this dialogue this year would contribute in implementing or would contribute in this transformation that we hope for.
Yes, indeed. Almost all the points that you spoke about were really real challenges to the security of the Arab world. Also, were addressed in our foreign minister's statements before the security dialogue that comes at the backdrop of different changes in the whole world. We're speaking about different alliances, different perspectives to a political situation, geographic even in some areas. We're speaking here about concrete problems. We're speaking here about concrete challenges in the foreign policy. And one of the issues the foreign minister spoke about was accelerated kind of multilateralism action, Arab action towards the issue. Now, if we are speaking about the past challenges, we are facing new challenges. How do you view how the Arab world need to address those changes, those challenges at this upcoming stage? What is needed at this upcoming stage?
Well, 2 weeks ago, Algeria announced that the regular Arab summit would convene in Algeria next March. And I guess it would be, once convened, it would be a good starting point for the Arab governments to discuss the developments that the Arab world have witnessed from the last time a regular Arab summit had taken place, and that almost two years ago. During these 2 years, there are fundamental changes that we have seen in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, which in some are to a great extent positive. And there are other changes in other parts of the Arab world that we are expecting that this upcoming Arab summit would improve. What I have on my mind is the situation in Yemen, in Lebanon, the Palestinian question. Yes. The Palestinian question, relations between Morocco and Algeria, regrettably, the diplomatic relations between the two Arab countries, the two neighborly countries, have been severed. And so the starting point, to answer your question, as far as the Arab world is concerned, I guess a good starting point will be the next regular Arab summit. Whether the Arab countries would succeed in formulating a joint vision, in adopting a joint position on how to deal effectively and constructively with all these changes, that remains to be seen.
Yes, Ambassador Harridy, also beside the Arab problems, crises that has been those crises have been going on for some time. So we're speaking about some countries that have been in crises for now almost a decade. Here I'm asking also about the political situation or the outlook of the whole world. We're speaking about new alliances, world alliances. We're speaking about proxy wars that are taking place. We're speaking about countries who were supposed to be alliances, but then things were different and they are starting new kind of relations. And we are in face of all those challenges. How do you view how the Arab world should act at the coming stage to face or to confront all those changes and circumstances?
Well, of course, the international system is witnessing major transformations. Now, as the Chinese President Xi Jinping said the other day, that in the next 50 years, relations between the United States and China will be fundamental in preserving international peace and security. So, speaking about transformational changes in the international system, this is where we should start. Where do the Arab world is on this competition, growing competition between the United States and China, and the implications of this competition on the relations of the Arab world with both the United States on the one hand and China on the other hand. That's one major issue. The other one is how now with the changes taking place in the global the global strategy of the United States, moving from Europe, from the Mediterranean, from the Middle East, to concentrate on the Indo-Pacific Indo-Pacific region, then the Arab countries in general should also see what will be the implication of on relations with the States.
I have a break here because there is the Adhan and we'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Harridy, for being with us over the phone. Yes, this regional security dialogue forum taking place in Bahrain, and this 17th session is really comes at a very critical time when the Arab world is facing lots and lots of challenges, lots and lots of issues, security problems, stability and prosperity. Very important topics that should be taking place or should be faced by the Arab wisdom and multilateral actions as spoken by our foreign minister there. Moving on to our next topic in this episode, and the Crown Prince, the Britain Crown Prince and Prince of Wales, and his wife made a rare trip, a very important one, the very first overseas since the coronavirus pandemic. Before we move on to discuss this trip or his trip to Jordan and Egypt, let's first watch the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
The Foreign Ministry announced on Thursday Egypt's re-election to the membership of the Executive Council of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO for the period from 2021 to 2025. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ambassador Ahmed Hafiz hailed Egypt's re-election as an international recognition of Egypt's pivotal and leading role within the United Nations in general and especially UNESCO. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry paid a visit to the United Arab Emirates, where he took part in the 12th Sirbaniyes Forum organized by the Emirati Foreign and International Cooperation Ministry. The Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Hafiz said that Shoukry's participation in this round of such an important international forum comes in the framework of Egypt's keen interest in exchanging viewpoints and holding consultations with leading intellectuals and senior officials on urgent issues and prioritized files relevant to the Middle East peace, security, and stability. On the sidelines of his participation in the forum, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry met Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi and Iraqi Foreign Minister Fouad Hussein. Air and naval joint drills Midoha 11 commenced on Thursday in Greece. Drills which will last for several days to be carried by the Egyptian, Greek, and Cypriot and Emirati forces units in addition to Jordan as an observer. Egypt's Mistral-class helicopter carrier Gamal Abdel Nasser will take part in several maritime vessels and multitask aircraft and planes. Syria announced that Israel had carried out an attack on the country's south on Wednesday, targeting Ghazi House and causing no the missiles had come from the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights and aimed at building the south of the capital, Damascus. Later, Commander Khalifa as candidate in the country's presidential elections next month. Haftar submitted his candidacy papers in the eastern city of Benghazi and announced the forces, but delegated his duties in September to his chief of staff Abdurraz al-Naduri for term.
By Crown Prince and his wife to the Middle East, the first the coronavirus pandemic erupted, and the choice of Jordan and Egypt. So the phone, Dr. Meet. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Yes, and you're reading to the Crown Prince Jordan and just first to go to countries and how the world perceived such a trip.
First of all, this is a very good step to the Middle East, particularly to Egypt, because it will send more than one message. That it will show the stability and a trip from a well-known, of course, prince and his wife coming from the royal family to Egypt. That means that we have stability, we are having development, and things are changing. We also can talk about something else, which is the fact that we do not have the emergency law anymore. That will also give a green light to whoever would like to visit Egypt, they can come. So I think this is boosting for Egypt also from many sides. Yes.
Yes, Dr. Bagneed, we're speaking here about his trip to Jordan first, where he met with where his wife Camilla met with the Queen, and he met with the King, and his visit here to Egypt, where a number of issues were raised and a number of activities he and his wife carried out with. Let me here speak about the important topics that topped the agenda of talks or the talks between the President and the Crown Prince.
Now, what's the question? I missed that.
I said, you're reading to the important topics that were raised during the discussion between the British Crown Prince and the President.
First of all, now we are involved for serious talk between Egypt and, say, the UK. And he watched. I mean, I looked quickly to some of the important visits. I'm not talking about the touristic visits to Egypt. I'm talking about the development itself, going to main places, seeing that Egypt is doing well and seeing the progress in Egypt, which is something very good.
So Dr. Magda, yes, there were several particular issues, including that Britain, for an instant, held this Glasgow, the COP26, and Egypt will hold this next one. But there is also important, very important dialogue that took place, which is the interfaith dialogue, the tolerance, the coexistence, and Egypt as a model for such an issue, plus definitely the cultural aspects, since we know that the Crown Prince is very much interested in the cultural aspect. How do you view his meeting with the President and then his meeting with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar afterwards?
Yes, I have seen that part, which is going even to the to the mosque, the Great Mosque, and visiting it. It means that we have tolerance. We have tolerance to see what is taking place in Egypt. This is moderate Egypt. No act of terrorism and accepting the other, which is something which is very good, especially from somebody coming from England, especially that we did not have this kind of dialogue for some time. Of course, this is a plus to Egypt, and this is a boost to the policy and to the stability and to the general, atmosphere in the Middle East, and in particular to Egypt. Definitely, this is something very important. I would appreciate very much, the idea itself of the visit, and also for welcoming him. And he himself said that he did have a warm welcome from Egypt and from President Sisi. So this is very good. Yeah.
Indeed, he was most welcome with several events taking place in his honor in the plateau of El Giza at Al Ahram, or the pyramids area. Another one in or his different meetings and activities that took place in markets, and all these meetings. Also, his wife Kamala attended several Egyptian events.
I've seen some of them, but not all. But anyway, I was very impressed, and anybody would watch that would be impressed,
Exactly, and this is my question. How would that reflect the image in Egypt? How would that propagate for Egypt, particularly that we are on the verge of this upcoming touristic season, and we are today sending this important message: Egypt is back?
Yes, it's of course this is very positive. You're giving a positive image, and from somebody who is very, very much reliable and seen on the eyes and the world itself by the media. So just by touring and talking and involving in Egypt and the Egyptian society and so on, that's a positive image that we need. Egypt needs that, to tell them that everything is secure, we are fine. So touristically speaking, developmental speaking, and otherwise, and even tolerance in religion. We have seen and visited here and there. Generally speaking, nobody can say anything, but this is a plus to Egypt, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think the Crown Prince, or the highest royal member now in the family, chose his first overseas trip to be to the Middle East, to Jordan and Egypt? What does this convey, or what message does this give?
Okay, it shows only one point: the importance of Egypt in the Middle East. It's one of the key countries that should be taken into consideration in many ways, politically speaking and otherwise. So Egypt is something like a core. That's the message. We could not ignore Egypt and its importance. And we're coming to this stage. Yes, we are important in this sense. And you will see more coming. Not just the prince, but you will see much more taking place to Egypt. And anyway, I would see it as a positive image, and will be reflected in the media worldwide. That's a plus.
Indeed. Dr. Magda Begneid, Professor of Mass Communication, thank you so much for being with us and for your input and insight to this important trip by the Crown Prince. And before we end our episode, let's take this report, and definitely Egypt at the heart of every situation and every political and important Arab file is always there. And we move on to see Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry attended the ad hoc liaison committee on the Palestinian aid in Norway. That was a few days ago. Let's watch.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry called for the drafting of an integrated vision to fulfill the needs of the Palestinian people and the help of the Palestinian Authority overcome the economic crisis in the Palestinian territories. Shoukry made the comments at a ministerial meeting of the Ad Hoc Liaison Committee for Coordinating International Aid to the Palestinian people, which was held in Norway. Shoukry underlined Egypt's efforts to provide humanitarian support to the Palestinians and to reconstruct the Gaza Strip, highlighting the steps implemented in this respect in coordination with the Palestinian Authority. The economic crisis in the Palestinian territories has worsened on the heels of the recent Israeli war in Gaza in May, the COVID-19 pandemic, and delays in the payment of salaries by the Palestinian Authority. In a recent report, the World Bank expressed concern about the Palestinian Authority's financial situation, saying it was no longer able to borrow from local banks. It said the budget deficit will be 1.36 billion American dollars in 2021, making it even more difficult to meet its obligations of the year. And Gaza in under restrictions rate are for the recent 11 build the picture.
Stated by most that we know the general conditions and the underlying factors.